Hello, this is Bronya. Welcome to my webinar. And today we're going to start with JavaScript, with programming in JavaScript. I have brackets running. I'm not going to be working in brackets actually, I'm just going to show you it's the same. You can find the video on how to set up a development environment on my channel. The easiest way is to download brackets. I'm going to be working in NetBeans. So create a folder somewhere on your computer. Select the folder and create two files, index.html and main.js. Like here, new file, just type the file name, press enter. And the file is created. Create files, index.html, main.js. If you want to run things, I've shown it last time, you have to have Chrome installed. Press this icon here, looks like a horizontal flash. Just press it, it will run. You can actually see hello here. Just pressing F12. Show development tools or not. I'm going to be using NetBeans and a setup domain webinar.test. So I have the files here, it's the same files. And I have my domain set up in a browser. You can see it in my video as well. About the console, there are different ways to set it up. You can have it as a separate window. Now I lost it actually. You can add it right, left, bottom, but there's no much space here. So let's put it here to the right and click console. Select console. Create a file index.html, which is the file you'll be running. Put main.js in it. If I run this, it doesn't matter which one you're running. Type this in the HTML file. If you know HTML, you know what it means. If you don't know HTML, you don't have to care, just type that in. Script file, source is main.js, and in the same folder you have a main.js where it's console.log and in brackets and quotes the word hello. And when you run it, either through the domain or through the brackets, just pressing you'll see hello. It actually doesn't matter which environment you use. I'm going to be using this one. So we have your first program. Actually, the program did something. It outputted hello. So, first of all, what is programming? Programming is about writing programs, of course. Programs is pretty much everything your computer does, your computer runs. So all of those processes, your computer is running that. And everything is a program. Everything that's running is a program. Program actually is, you can imagine it as a cookbook. You tell the computer what to do. In the same way as with the cooking, you don't just get food. You have to go step by step, prepare it, cook it. In the end, you have a program running. In programming, we have what we call instructions. So we tell program what to do in sequence of instructions. So I can do this and then I'm gonna explain it later. This time without the quotes around it. Save it. I have hello and 8. So I'm telling computer print this in a development console. Let's set it's F12 if you don't know, or more tools, developer tools. As I said, check out console. Print out hello, do addition and the result, and print out the result of the addition. Why it looks like this, I'm gonna explain later, but this is basically what you do. This is a programming. And those are instructions. It looks like 3 instructions, they're actually 5, I guess, or more even, depending on how you look at it. Well, this is JavaScript. It's a programming language that's running in a browser and that manages your web page. You can have instruction, you can have comments. Comments don't do anything. It allows you to comment your code so you can get back to it, understand it better. So I can say print out hello, add 2 numbers, and print the result. So you can have comments that are one-line comments starting with 2 backslashes. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't have to be at the beginning of the line. Everything that's after those 2 backslashes is a comment. Or you can have comments that span multiple lines, start with the backslash asterisk, ends with the asterisk backslash. Comments don't do anything. If I run the code, there's no change. They are there for you to help you understand what you wrote. If you're working in collaboration, but even if you're working alone, it's always good practice to comment your code so you know what it does. So programming is basically about shuffling data. There is some input and there is some output of the data. We can understand this as an input, so it's something that comes into our program and then we output it somehow. The output and input can be anything. I can click, that's input as well. Program runs usually from top to bottom as you write them. So this is why the first thing that was printed was hello, then the addition actually happened and the result was 8. You can rearrange, jump around your code. It's usually up to you. How do you jump? Where do you jump? So let's start with something. Doing actually something. Let's start with this line. In programming, we have identifiers and values. Values are something that actually represents something quote-unquote tangible. Number 5, a word hello. Object, for example, user of your program. Identifiers mean something for the language. They are either reserved words, which means the words belong to the programming language. The programming language knows what to do with these words. For example, this is a word that tells, hey, I'm creating a variable. Or you can have identifiers that you name, that you create, so you can pass the values around. Those are fixed. You have to know them. This is this is up to you how you name them. Still works. You won't see, of course, any output here. We haven't outputted anything. Identifiers in JavaScript have to start with either underscore or $, or any other character, including characters outside of English, or a number. They cannot start just by number because that would be a number. I strongly suggest you stick to English language. It's completely pointless if you're, for example, I'm Czech, I'm from Czech Republic. It's completely pointless to start to name variables like this. It will still work. But if I give this code to anyone else who isn't Czech, they won't understand what it means. So stick to English. It's the best choice for you. So we have reserved words, words that belong to the language, identifiers, we have values, number, strings, something else. You can see that I'm ending each instruction with semicolon. It's not absolutely necessary. Not every line you're gonna write will end with semicolon. This is perfectly valid, but you're gonna learn where to type semicolon, where not to type semicolon. JavaScript does something that's called automatic semicolon insertion. So it tries to figure out where to put semicolon. This still works. It doesn't print an error. This is gonna print an error. It figured out that there should be a semicolon, but just put semicolon everywhere it belongs. There may be an issue with this. As I've showed you, if I write something that makes no sense to the language, there is an error. It shows me where the error is. Just click it. Okay, it's here. When you run a program, it goes, when you run a JavaScript, it goes through two main phases. First one is parsing. The second one is execution. Execution is really complicated. There's a compiling involved, etc. It doesn't matter. The first phase, the parsing phase, means that the browser goes through the code it sees and tries to figure out whether it's correct, whether it can understand it. It's the same like natural language. If I would say blah 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 blah, you would have no idea what I'm talking about. And this is the same for language, which means every instruction, everything you write must make sense to the language. And if the language doesn't know, it simply fails. It doesn't do anything. If I comment this out, we're gonna have 11 hello world. This is the addition, this is the some text. If I uncomment it, the program terminates and have no idea what to do. So whatever you do, you have to write a correct program. So let's start talking a little bit about the types, the type system. Type is a sort of a box. It's like a separation of values, what the value can be. There are several types of values in JavaScript. 6 basic, 6 primitives, and object, I believe it would be. So we start with the define null, number, string, boolean, symbol, object. I think that's all of them, if I remember correctly. We skip this for now. Skip this for now. We'll start with the easier number. Unlike other languages, a lot of other languages, JavaScript have only one number type, number. I can actually ask what is the type of 5. Well, it's a number. 5.7. Well, it's still a number. Let me comment all this. It's still a number. So the type of actually gives you type of number. We're gonna get what it means, doesn't matter. There are weird issues with number in JavaScript actually. It's not always makes sense. What do you think this should be? Oh, 0.3. Well, it's not actually. There is a slight difference. It's about how computer stores numbers. Computer cannot store data in any other way other than 1 and 0. It doesn't work in decimal system like we do, 0 to 9. It only has 0 and 1. So the way how it stores number results in this error. It doesn't have problem with regular integers, with whole numbers. It's working perfectly fine. There's also a limitation to numbers. What is it? 2 to 53. Oh yeah, what's this? So I'm gonna stick in a console. It's actually interactive. When you see arrow pointing to the right, it's my input. If you see arrow pointing to the left, it's what the computer returns to me as an output. That's what I told about input output. So I'm gonna do this. Well, that's correct. I'm gonna do this. Well, that's not correct. I'm gonna do this. Well, that's correct. So there are limitations to numbering system of the computer. This is common with pretty much every computing language. There is some minimums, some maximums. Find it. No, it's not math, it's actually number. Talking about numbers. This is a max safe integer, actually. Not this one, it's this one. So this is the maximum. This is the minimum safe integer. Safe number the computer can actually work with. This is the actual max value the JavaScript can work with, although there's already some exponents. So between this number and this number you can do addition, subtractions, however you want. There's an issues. This, by the way, means this number times 10 to the power of 308. This is the E notation. So there are limitations, but you won't usually deal with them unless you're dealing with this with really large numbers. There is a new type, it's called big int. We're not gonna deal with it at this point. So numbers represents pretty much any number you can think of. There's something called pi. and the type of math pi is a number. Let's clear the console. Another type is a string. It's a text. Texts, we put text in a double or single quote. It must start with the same. So this is a text. This is exactly the same text. And this is error. I cannot start and end it with a different. The reason basically is to separate identifier from an actual text. As I've said, and this is identifier. Let's put it here. This is identifier. So the programming language needs to know what actually text is. Text is stored in something called UTF-16. If you don't know what it is, you don't have to care that much at this point. We're gonna get to it, although it let me get just to show you a little bit what it means. What is UTF? I don't want this smiley face. I love different smiley face. Oh yeah, I want this one. A smiley face actually in Unicode is a single character. It's actually a character. Characters, of course, are numbers, letters, but there are other characters. One of them is, for example, a smiley face. So you can write it, and JavaScript gives you a way how to write those special characters. As I said, we're gonna explore it a little bit more. There's UTF hex, so I believe it would be like this. Of course, it's a string, so you can see I actually got it. Or I can, not this one, I can borrow, I think, even this one. Actually type it like this. Yep, I got the same. So it's a single character. This is just a different way how to type a character. If I do this, I think it's a big A. It's the same thing as an actually big A. So there are different ways how to type characters. It has something to do with what, as I said, UTF-16. You don't have to, of course, remember how to type A. You probably won't need to remember how to type crying smiley face or crying face. There are few characters though that are useful. For example, enter. If you need uh, text that spans multiple lines, you write it as a \n, as a new line. Then it goes, then the JavaScript goes interpreting what you've written, and it understands what it means. So \, usually starts something special in a text. So if I want to if I would do this, the \ is not displayed. The JavaScript doesn't know what to do with it. So if you want to, this is called escaping. If you want to actually write \, you write 2. If you want to write, I have one quote. I cannot do this because this would end the text. So I need to \. Or I can put the text in double quotes. But of course, if I would want to use the double quotes, I need to escape it. So we usually use text as an actual text, though, although there are special ways how to write text. UTF-16 can cover any character, anything. Of course, English alphabet, Greek, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Eastern European, as you can see, even special characters that are considered actually one character, anything. And when you type it the special way, this is considered one character. So what is it? Oh no, it will be decimal 96, which means I need something like this is hello. As I've said, it understands that if it finds \x, it needs to write the next 2 characters and turn it into appropriate symbol, appropriate character. You can find the characters. It's not necessarily ASCII. We're talking about UTF-16. ASCII is slightly different, but yeah, come on. Here we can find, for example, character E, capital E is 49. Or we use this, where we can use 4 numbers. So there are different ways how to type string, but we usually work with string itself. Working with code points, code units is slightly tricky if you run actually into them, but just slightly tricky. So that's numbers and strings. Then another type is a type Boolean. Boolean type has only 2 values, a value true, a value false. You just type them. This is true, this is false. It allows us to evaluate conditions in a computer. For example, if I type this, I get a number. I get an 8. Type of 5 plus 3. If I do this, it's actually Boolean. So this is true or false. That's everything. There are two more types, undefined and null. Null is a little bit tricky. There is an error in JavaScript. There's actually an error. If I do type of undefined, well, that's undefined. It's a separate type. But if I do type of null, it actually returns object. Although it's not it. It's not object. It's actually a separate type null. And this type has only a single value, and the value is null. It represents nothing. So for example, when you need when you have a program and you search for, let's say, a user based on a login name and password. Someone tries to log in into your page and you don't find any. So the value that you would return is null. Try to understand null as no object. It usually should refer to objects. It's just objects are separate symbol. That's probably separate type. I'm sorry. That's probably the reason why when they designed the language, they chose to call it object, but it's a separate type. It's null. Undefined, I'm gonna skip those two for now. We're gonna stick with those. So let's talk about undefined. Undefined is a bit tricky. Oh, we're gonna skip undefined at this point as well. I'm gonna get back to it. So how do we work with values, with everything that can be interpreted in the language? We use variables or constants. Let's start with variables. Let's start with the most simple example. When we want to declare a variable, we need a value and an identifier. Identifier and a value, and we assign it. We assign using sign equal. Doesn't do, of course, anything. If I had this, it would be A as a text. This is using the identifier. And this is basically what variables are. They are containers for values. So you have a value and you need to pass the value through the program. You pass it through variables. You cannot pass values through program because you don't know what the values may be. Someone types something into as I said, login and password. The user types that. You don't know what that is, but you can store that actual value that the user typed in a variable. although the language doesn't necessarily care, we're gonna get to it why. Always use declaration of the variable, not just this assignment, but actual declaration of the variable. You can use this, this, this. There are differences, of course, between all those declarations. I'll just stick to var at this point. It's like the worst way how you can declare a variable, but it's the easiest to understand what it does. Eventually we're gonna get to it. I was talking about declaration. Code in JavaScript can be of two kinds. This actually means this. This is pretty much the same. Let's put it something else. First I declare the variable, so that's a declaration, and then I actually do something with the variable. I assign to it number 15. That's called expression. Declaration prepares something in language, prepares something in environment of the running program, and expression actually do something. Sometimes you can mix them. We have declarations and we have expressions. So what happens if I don't actually assign anything to it? What is A now? A is undefined. So there's a difference. Although null means nothing, as I've said, undefined sort of means nothing. There is a slight difference. Null is a value, but it means nothing. Undefined means that there is no value. If you can understand the difference a little bit, you should not use undefined. You can, of course. I mean, it's still a value, so I can do this. It's undefined. I can do this, this, this. So it's 5, then it's undefined. You can assign it to variable, but you should not. There's no reason to do it, and in the language there's no point in doing this. It's a good practice to use the undefined value as a way of a program informing you that there is something that wasn't assigned any value. At this point, if you do this, you don't, and then you have like 3,000 lines of code, and you look at this value A here, you don't know if you forgot to assign it value, or your program forgot to assign it a value, or you assign it an undefined. So it's a good practice. There are other things concerning undefined, but it's a good practice not to assign undefined anything. And you can check out whether a variable is undefined or whether something you're working with is undefined, and then decide upon it, hey, something's wrong with my code. It doesn't necessarily mean that something wrong with my code, like an error, but you should probably figure out why there's undefined. Is it by design? Did you forget something? And we're gonna skip symbols and objects for now. They're not important at this point. Another thing about variables, the way JavaScript works is that JavaScript doesn't care. In other languages, you may have to specify what type it is. So in other languages, you would have to write something, for example, like this. You would specify when you declare the variable, okay, it's going to be Boolean. JavaScript doesn't care. And in those other languages, if you do something like this, the program would crash because 5 is not Boolean, 5 is a number. JavaScript doesn't care. You don't specify type. And you can sort of retype the variable later on. It's true 5. Whatever you want. So it's called dynamic loose typing. It doesn't matter how you call it. So in JavaScript, it doesn't care. The variable can have different types of values at any point. There is pretty much no way how to restrict it. Almost no way. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things, and I'm going to be saying a lot of statements. Not everything is necessarily true, in a sense that there are exceptions, there are special cases. But what I mean to stress here is, who cares about the type of the variable? The last thing I'm going to talk about now are operators. So what is an operator? Well, there are several operators here. This is an operator, and even this is an operator. What operators do is they work with values or variables. They work with values and variables similarly as you can see in math. As you understand math, you've seen it. That doesn't, space is inconsequential here, it's just good practice. So of course 6, I have variable having value 1, I have variable having value 2, I add them together with value 3 and assign it to value C, and it's C, similarly as math. There are a lot of operators in JavaScript. One of the let's do it this way. Madonna here. Madonna is like Madonna is probably the best documentation you can find on web development. It has everything. This is JavaScript. If I try to search HTML, CSS, so pretty much all 3 technologies we use to create web pages are on MDN. Mozilla Development Network. There is a lot of operators in JavaScript. They have precedence, they have associativity. And they do something called type coercion. So what's the result now? It's either 9 or 7. Well, math tells us the result should be 7. Because multiplication is more important than addition. So this should be evaluated first. It should be computed first. It's 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. That's called operator precedence. So which operator has the highest precedent? This is also operator. So if you would go simply from left to right, we would get first this assignment, C equals A, so C would suddenly be 1 as well, and we would have 1 here. But the table of operator precedence goes from the most important to the least important, tells us that assignment, where is assignment? Here. Has lower precedence than multiplication and addition. And multiplication has higher precedence than addition. So when this is evaluated, what JavaScript does, it's look at it and figure out, okay, there are a bunch of values, variables, connected via operators. So this is the highest precedence, so I'll do this. There are operators, by the way, working on either 1 or 2 or 3 operators. Most of them work on 2, as we know from math. This still works on 2 operators. So first let's do this. We get sort of. C equals A plus 6. Then it does this, because plus has a higher preference than assign. So it does this. And this is an operator, and operators return something the same way as this returns 6. Assignments returns as well. Assignment returns the right side, actually, not the left side, but the right side. So it assigns to the C number 7. The fact that assignment returns something is not important here at this point. But it assigns to the C number 7. So when we write C, it is 7. So there's assignment. There's priority. There's also something called associativity. How is it evaluated? It can either be from left to right or right to left. Let me find something that's right to left that would be simple to explain. This. So at this point we evaluate how is this. Okay, this is gonna be simple. Let's do it like this. So how is this evaluated? There are 2 operators with the same precedence. They are actually the same, but they don't have to be. You can have several operators with the same precedence. So how is it evaluated? What's going to be the result of C? So A is 1, B is 2, we have C declared. So what's going to be a result here? It's evaluated from right to left, not as we evaluate math from left to right. This would be evaluated, okay, those have the same precedence. We would do A plus B, this is 3, minus 3 is 0. This one's ABC, ABC, from left to right. This is evaluated from right to left, which means not this, but this is evaluated first. So we assign A to B, which means B becomes 1. And then the result of this, we assign to C. C becomes 1. So there is something called precedence and associativity. You don't necessarily have to remember this table. I don't remember this table. I of course remember how math works. But there are operators that I'm not exactly sure where their precedents are. But what you can use and what has the highest priority, parentheses, always. This is 7. This is 9. So when you're not sure, when you have some complex expression, just use parentheses. It's always a good practice. You may not necessarily remember the next time you watch your code what you wanted to do. Other people reading your code also should understand what you wanted to do. So it's a good practice to use parentheses nonetheless. This is gonna be everything for today, and next time we're gonna look at something strange. Our knowledge of math and our knowledge of how things work, how we used to, says, well, this is true, 3 is bigger than 2 and 2 is bigger than 1. This is false. Well, this we thought was true, this we thought was false. The JavaScript says, well, this is false, and this is true. We're gonna figure out why. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you next time. Broňas out.